What's going on, everyone? Well, I'm out here on the Sacramento River today. I was trying to catch a salmon. It's like 12 o'clock right now, or it's just after, and I got out here at 6 in the morning. So I've spent a lot of hours, I guess that's 6 hours, trying to get one. No luck. I was hoping to make a video today, giving you guys a report on the water, maybe showing someone catch one, myself hopefully, but I've seen nothing, like nothing at all. Going by boats, asking everyone if they've seen anything. No one's seeing a single fish. Again, today's August 8th. So that's the fishing report for out here. Any luck yet? Nah, yeah, I just trolled all the way down. Nothing. You know, while I'm out here, I got all my lures out and I took the time to kind of show you guys the different tips and tricks I've learned over the years, how to use the different lures, different methods. So I'm gonna go ahead and show that for you guys here. If you find it useful, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, because I'm gonna be out here a bunch more times over the next few months trying to catch salmon and sharing all that with you guys. So hopefully you enjoy it. Stay tuned, and here you go. Okay, so as we get started here, I want to point out that I'm in the Metro Sacramento area, and these techniques should work anywhere from, I would say, like Rio Vista all the way up to where the Feather River hits the Sacramento River. Keep in mind, it might be a little noisy out here as I film this, because there's a lot of boats going by, and that's just what it's like being on the Sacramento River in the summertime. So you might be wondering, when can you fish for salmon on the Sacramento River? So the season usually opens middle of July and closes sometime in December. So you have several months to fish for them, but really what you want to do is target them in September and October. That's when you're going to have the highest percentage of catching a fish and the most fish are here. If you're targeting a really big one, usually like October, November, December. The bigger ones come up later, and so that's when you want to target them, those months. One of the reasons why it gets better as it gets later in the year is because the water temperature. So as I'm out here today in early middle August, the water's 72 degrees. The water, like in November, is going to be in the low 50s. It's going to drop 20 degrees over the next few months. I would say the best fishing for salmon on the Sacramento River is when you get in the high 50s. Right when you get below 60 into 50s, the bite really picks up. Okay, so now I want to talk to you about the different techniques you can do when you're on the Sacramento River. I would say there's, 4 main different things you can do. That would be trolling, back bouncing or back trolling, jigging, or casting lures offshore. So I'm gonna go ahead and spend a little time and get into detail on all 4 of those. So when trolling, you pretty much have 2 lures, in my opinion, that you want to use. That's gonna be your Silvertrons and your Brad's cut plugs. So now, the reason why Silvertrons are so good for trolling is they don't weigh a lot, okay? So they don't sink. As you're trolling, they're gonna kind of go at the same depth as you're wanting. If you have like a heavier lure that has more weight to it, it's gonna drag along the bottom. So that's why I like Silvertrons, and I would say they're a local favorite in this area. Then you have your Brad's cut plugs. So these are pretty good to use. I would say you need to have a little more experience, a little more technique when using these. The flasher's a little more straightforward. So if you're just getting started, I would stick to Silvertrons, but definitely experiment with the cut plugs because they do work very well. But there's just a little more to it. You got to stuff them here. Let me go ahead and take this rubber band off. See, so they open up, and you always want to fill it with tuna, some scent, Procure. There's different things that you can put in there. So when you're trolling with the Silvertrons, I like to do it behind a flasher. So this is what the trolling rig looks like when we use a Silvertron. We go to a spreader. You prefer that over a 3-way swivel just because it keeps your lines separated and stuff from getting tangled. Go down from the weight. I like about an 18-inch leader. And then you're gonna go back to your flasher, probably 8 to 14 inches you can go there. And then from your flasher, you want to put some kind of nice swivel, ball bearings, something so your line doesn't get twisted. And then I would go back at least 3 feet to 4 feet to your Silvertron. So this is what it looks like. Go ahead, drop it in the water. Just like that. So I'm in 17 feet of water right now. You're gonna go ahead and drop it down. Not real fast. Keep your thumb on the spool. so it doesn't get, you know, twisted up, tangled as you drop it down. You're gonna feel the bottom, you're gonna lift up, and then you're gonna let slack down and feel the bottom again. And you kind of just keep working it down, because, you know, as you're moving forward, you're gonna have to let more slack out until you feel the bottom, and you wanna fish this as close to the bottom as you can. When you're doing a Brad's cut plug, generally that's gonna be behind a Dodger. And you're gonna rig it up the same way with your 3-way swivel, probably 18-inch down to a weight. I would usually use a little heavier weight when I'm trolling with Dodgers, maybe about an 8-ounce, maybe a 10-ounce even if you're deeper. So those are gonna be your 2 main setups you wanna use when you're trolling out here on the Sacramento River. Generally what people do is they work a stretch over and over and over again. So what I mean is you'll pick maybe about a half mile. You always want to troll down river. So you're going to troll down river, and then when you get to the end, you're going to drive, you know, fast back up, circle around, and then troll back down and keep working an area. There's a few different reasons you want to do that. One is you get familiar with the area, the depths. On the Sacramento River, the depth's always changing, and you want to keep your bait as close to the bottom as you can. And if it's an area you're not familiar with, it gets frustrating. You're constantly changing, you don't know what's going on, snags can come up. So when you're working an area that you're familiar with, you're being productive. And that's so much about fishing the Sacramento River. It's just fishing productive, your odds of hooking up really improve. Another reason is the salmon, you know, they're moving up the river in schools, let's call it. Schools of, I mean, I'm just throwing a number out here, 50 to 100. And so by working an area over and over again, eventually those schools are gonna work their way into those spots that you're working. If you're going down on them, you're gonna come across them often. You know, and if you locate salmon when you're trolling, work that area over and over again. And then, you know, after an hour, if they're not there, you can move upriver and get on them that way. So when you're trying to find your spot to troll for salmon on the Sacramento River, I would look for stretches. Bends are a little harder to work for a few different reasons, right? The inside's shallower, the wider part's gonna generally be deeper, and you have a different depth, right? If you find a straightaway, it's usually pretty consistent what the depth is, and I'm gonna favor the side that's deeper. So what I like to do is get the boat and go kind of back and forth in the area to see which side's deeper, you know, on the depth finder. And then you're gonna favor this deeper side, and you're gonna try and find a channel, a deep area. So one side, you know, might be 13 feet deep, another side 20 feet deep, but somewhere in the middle is like a 22-foot spot. Go to that 22-foot spot and find that like deeper hole, and that's where I'll troll along. So probably one of the easiest and most enjoyable ways of fishing for the salmon is the back bouncing or back trolling with the Brad's cut plugs. Okay, so I just clipped one on. Here we go. So we got our same kind of things before we're trolling. Your spreader, weight, you can use anywhere between 3 to 5 ounce, about 4-foot leader. You'll drop it down and you'll see if we just hold it still how it moves. Can you see that? See, so the current's just gonna move it like that down there. Lift up and just make sure it's right off the bottom, inches off the bottom, ideally. They come in all different sizes and shapes. I recommend the K15 size. When I first started out, you know, you're a little intimidated by bigger lures. These are K14s, these are the K15s, and these are K16s. You know, last year I started using K16s and catching them. So I think the best one is the K15, that's what I would start with. So that's what I'm doing right now as I'm filming this video. My lines right here are in the water, and they're just working for me, right? So I'm anchored up, the current's pulling the lure, giving it action right now. I just have them on the bottom right now. And so what you also want to do when you're using those is you want to scent them. So most people wrap Sardine around them and then put some Procure on them. So that's what they're going to look like when you wrap them. I have a video. have a video explaining how to wrap the sardine, and I'll go ahead and put that in the description. I filmed that last year. It's very short, and you should watch it, because I would never go out here and fish with these Brad's killer fish without putting the sardine wrap on them and Procure scent. The Procure scent I always use is the garlic bloody tuna, and I like to buy the gel and oil it and put both on. So when you're looking for a spot to do the back bounce or back troll, again, I'm gonna be looking for the deeper side of the river. And in this spot, it's okay to work the bends and work that deeper area. It's really important to find an area that has some current, right? Because the current is what's pulling the lure, what's giving it the action. So if you're in a spot that the water's not moving well, it doesn't work that well. So like the deeper areas or the wider parts of the river, right? Those don't have as good of current. The more narrow parts, the areas that are a little shallower, the water's gonna move better. Like where I'm at right now, the water comes off the American River and runs down along here. And you can see the action that my lure has on the pull. See it bouncing? I don't know if you guys can pick that up, but it's bouncing right there. And so that's the lure rattling. So you want to make sure that's happening, or it's going to be really hard to catch one. So you want to find like some deep holes, a deep pool. So what I'll do is I'll find the deeper side. So let's say one side is 13 feet, the other side is 20 feet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start working up that 20 feet side. And what I want to see is I want it to go from 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, and kind of get shallow quickly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw my anchor on like that 15, 16 feet, and I'm going to make the boat drift back right over that 20 foot, right where that ledge starts, and that's where I'm going to drop my bait. And I found success doing that, finding my spots that way, trying to find, you know, little holes they're going to be in. So, you know, what I've heard is that the fish, they like to rest in the deeper water, because, you know, like we said earlier, the current's not as fast in the deeper water. So that's sometimes where they'll take their breaks in those deeper pools. So the next method I want to talk about for catching the salmon out here on the Sacramento River is jigging. Jigging's a ton of fun. You use these P-line laser minnows, or at least that's what I would recommend, like the 2 ounce. I like purple or black with the silver on it. You can use whatever color you want though. As you can imagine, you just drop it to the bottom and yank it up, hit the bottom, yank it up, hit the bottom, yank it up, you know, as you're drifting down river. So you're not anchored up, motor's off. So for your jig, I would just tie it, the line straight to it. I don't like to use any swivel or anything else like that. It's just the ring that it comes with, and just drop it like that. You can use, you know, your heavier bass rod for this. You know, 30 to 50 pound braid would work fine. And you're just gonna jig it along the bottom, kind of just what you would think you would do. You know, different people have different techniques. Some people have some little flick that they do. But yeah, hit the bottom and bring it up. And you want to put some pretty good action into it. And you're just going to jig it along the bottom. It's really nice if you have a trolling motor up front, you know, electric trolling motor, because that can help position you and slow you down if the current's a little faster and get you going the right speed. So when you're looking for a spot for jigging, it's kind of like the other things. You're looking for the deeper part of the water. It's nice to follow a deeper edge. So it's pretty deep, like along this edge right here, close to shore. And that's generally where people like to jig for them, like along an edge that's deeper. You're usually looking for 50 to 20 feet of water. It's a really fun method, and I think anyone can give that one a try. You know, if you have a bass boat, bass, you know, rods and reels, there's no reason why you can't come out here on the Sacramento River and try jigging in the morning, and most likely you'll get one. So let's talk about fishing for salmon from shore now. You know, that can be one of the most fun ways to hook up on one. That's why you'll get 100 people on the shore, shoulder for shoulder, fishing for them. The lures people are usually using are called Flying C's from MEPS. They come in a variety of colors. You always want to use the 7/8 ounce one. I like the, you know, the chartreuse green and the pink, orange. Those are going to be some of the go-to colors right there. So when you're using them, you're going to want to cast out as far as you can, let the lure sink to the bottom, and then retrieve it along the floor line best you can. right? So if you're reeling faster, that lure is going to raise up. So you really got to be able to figure out how to work it so it spins and stays along the bottom. That's you're going to have the most success catching them. And what I would do is if you see someone hook up on one, you know, see how they're using the lure. You know, always just watch what other people are doing. Pick up techniques that way. People kind of flick them a little bit with their wrists. Some people real slower than faster. And you know, just see how people are catching them that day. So if you're looking for a spot to do that, you know, there's a lot of famous places along the Sacramento River that get, you know, hundreds of people when the bite's hot. Or you can try and find your own spot. To find your own spot, you know, look on Google Maps. That's what I like to do. And try and find a spot on the river that's more narrow. That's a little strategy right there, right? The fish are all moving up. If you go to somewhere that's so wide, the fish can be, you know, you're a lot harder to target them. Where if it's a narrow part of the river, they're gonna funnel through there. Same way as the depth of the water. If you're fishing in depth of water that's, you know, 30, 40, 50 feet deep, think about now how the fish can be higher, lower, and it's just so hard to find the depth they're at versus the water being, you know, 12, 15 feet deep. Now you can really get in the zone where the fish are at. So my technique would be try to find an area that's not very deep and the river is more narrow. So there's the Pro Cure I use, the garlic bloody tuna. I like to get the gel and the oil. Something I want to point out, it's important to not put it on your flashers. I don't like to do that because you want these to shine as best they can, and when you put oil on them, it kind of takes the shine away. So, you know, I would rub it on the or on the Mepps Flying C. I would try and stick some, you know, down by the hook back in there. On the Brad's Killer Fish, you saw how we do that. I bring out a Tupperware, get them already done, and I'll put the oils in there so they soak. The Brad's cut plug, remember you should make some tuna with some Pro Cure scent. Look online how to do it, what people are using, but you're always going to want to stuff that with some scent. You know, worst comes to worst, you get some foam to lay in there with some Pro Cure on it. Same again with the Silvertrons. I don't like rubbing Pro Cure on the flasher itself. You can put some on the beads there a little bit, but don't put it on the flasher. Another tip for using these is you want to polish them. You see how this one's not as shiny as the new one? I haven't cleaned these yet this year, just got them out. So I can see, you know, these need to be cleaned up before I want to use them, get more shine out of them. So I hope you're finding all of that helpful so far. I've also made a list of some quick tips I want to run by you. So again, let's talk about starting upriver and then working your way down. Again, try to imagine schools of fish working their way upriver. So if you start up and go down, you're gonna go over those fish. Versus if you start downriver and work your way up, you can kind of just be in, like, you know, no man's land, ghost area, no fish, and you're kind of just working that same space, that same water of nothing the whole day because there's fish ahead of you and fish behind you. Does that make sense? So work down in them, and if you see salmon, fish that spot, and if they leave, you can work up that way, right? So that's when the only time I would go upriver is if you're chasing the schools upriver, and that's totally fine to do that. Okay, so my next tip here for you is you always want to fish the early morning. Get out here as early as you can. Regulations say you can fish 1 hour before sunrise. So look, you know, at the area, what time sunrise is gonna be that day, and you can fish 1 hour before that. You know, sometimes that early is a little harder. You always want to use glow in the dark stuff if you're fishing in the dark. But let's just say, be out here when the sun gets up in the first few hours. That's prime time, and as the sun's going down as well. Middle of the day, it's a lot harder to catch one. Okay, so my next tip for you, which is something we've talked about a little bit, but is keep your lure, your baits along the bottom. The salmon come to the river almost always traveling on the bottom. That's where the water's the coolest. That's where they're gonna feel the safest. And that definitely holds true for early, mid-season fishing for the salmon on the river. Yes, at the end of the season, they jump a little bit more and then move up, mainly because the water's cooler. But you know, if you're fishing September, early October, make sure your bait's along the bottom. So every day is going to be different on the Sacramento River. You can have a really hot bite one day and no bite the next day, vice versa. You really never know. For obvious reasons, right? The fish are moving from the ocean up the river. So how do you know when they're gonna come? Is there any, idea that you can target better days than other? And from what I've heard from people is they like to leave the ocean and come up the river on full moons. So I like to come on the river when it's a full moon and the days after, for those reasons being that I think more fish are traveling up the river days following a full moon. You might not also know this, but the tide affects the water in the Sacramento metro area. So when the tide is going out, there's more of a current. When the tide's going up, coming in, the current isn't pulling as strong. So the theory is the fish, they travel more when the tide's kind of pushing a little bit. When the current's not going against them as strong, that's when they're traveling more, and they don't travel as much when the tide is going out. So a lot of people, they'll hunker down in a spot, and then everyone will talk, all right, the tide's about to change, tide's gonna start coming in, and they'll stay there hoping that a new flow of fish is about to come through. So keep in mind about the tides and the moon when trying to look for salmon. All right, so another way to try and figure out where the salmon are at or if they're in the area is from the sea lions. So as a salmon fisherman, we don't like the sea lions. We've all had one on our line in the ocean and it gets taken off. Well, that happens on the river as well. And so like today, I haven't seen a sea lion anywhere. That's not a good sign. That means there's probably not salmon in the area. When the bite's good and there's salmon, you'll see sea lions everywhere. So sea lions, bad, but the good is there's salmon around. So look out for sea lions. It's actually a positive on the Sac River. Okay, so I hope you guys found some of that information useful. Man, I love fishing for salmon on the Sacramento River. It's so much fun. Can't wait for this bite to pick up, September, October. Hopefully you guys can catch your own now using some of these strategies we talked about today. I'm going to be filming, all my times coming out here, making videos. I'm going to try and get them out as soon as possible so you guys can get these updates, reports. If you want those, please subscribe to the channel so that way you can get them right away. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, thank you. Bye.